Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets, powered by FTN, right here on Game Plus Network. I'm Chris Meaney. Thanks, as always, for taking the time to hang out here today. We are going to talk all things fantasy football, some NFL takeaways. Week 3 pretty much in the books. One more game to address here tonight. Of course, the Eagles rocking the green for Philly. They go into Dallas to take on the Cowboys. We have some picks for that game in a little bit. We are live here. If you're following along on the Twitter account at Chris Meaney, thanks as always for hanging out here with me. If you have any questions, hit me up. I did tweet out just a question asking, who are you most concerned about? Who are some players you're considering dropping? We're going to address that towards the end of the show, and there are a lot of concerns. So we can address a lot of these players. If you're jumping in here live in the show, please ask a question. We can get to it a little bit later on. Joe Metz is going to join me of FTN. We're going to hit up the waiver wire as well. So before we get into anything, I just wanted to take the time here to address Mike Tagliere. A good friend of mine, and unfortunately, it pains me to say we lost a great one here this past weekend in the fantasy industry. Mike Tagliere, had the opportunity to meet him here at Anthem Sports and Entertainment, had him on one of my shows back in the day at Anthem Media, and just such a stand-up guy, an unbelievable person. He would do absolutely anything for anybody. And, I think back at that first segment that I did with him and how he took the time to join me and how thankful he was. And really, it was me that I was so thankful for him taking the time and the opportunity. He was on point. He was such a hard worker. He was dedicated. He was really good at what he did. He was a loving husband and a father, leaves behind 2 kids and a wonderful wife and Tabby. And, my thoughts are with the entire Tagliere family. And on behalf of everybody here at FTN, we wish you all the best. And our thoughts and our prayers are certainly with you. And, Mike was an inspiration to me, to a lot of people in the fantasy industry, somebody that I looked up to. And like I said, he was such a hard worker. I mean, his player profiles over at Fantasy Pros were so in-depth, so detailed. He would do absolutely anything for you. I remember just talking to him. It feels like just yesterday in the summer when on Fantasy Pros podcast, we were talking about, just breakout players. And then we got off topic and, we just had a conversation about life. He just got a John Deere tractor. I had just got a tractor. I moved out east, and, our Sundays were just mowing the lawn, getting ready for the NFL season. Our Sundays were certainly going to be different when the football did start. And he was just that kind of guy. He was loving, he was caring. Overall, he was just like a good dude, right? He was never taking shots at anybody. And I went to my Twitter this past week and I had a tweet about just some of the nonsense that I see, on social media, and people really just taking the time to take shots at other people, and they're not supportive and they're not caring. And, Mike was just the complete opposite of that. We really did lose a good one. Mike Tagliere, buddy, I'll miss you every day, and I'll be thinking about you quite often and what you've done for a lot of people in the industry. And if you're looking to kind of carve a role in this industry, I thought Matthew Friedman said it best earlier when he said, be like Mike Tagliere, and take the time and work hard and do things for others and give them the time of the day if you can. So my thoughts are certainly with the Tagliere family, and on Fantasy Pros, they have a GoFund page happening right now. If you can do anything, $1, $2, anything to help out the Tagliere family. And, I encourage you to check out Fantasy Pros. And like I said, we lost a really good dude in the industry. He was so passionate. He was so on point with, what he did and the work that he did. And it really it showed with just hearing him talk and, hearing the excitement in his voice. And there wasn't a player he didn't know anything about. Like, it was like a defensive player you can bring up, and he was talking about the schemes. He was so good at what he did, but most of all, he was just such a great guy and a great family guy. So my love out there to the Tagliere family. And Mike, we will miss you. Hopefully you are enjoying the football tonight and you're in a better place, dude. We love you. And on behalf of everybody here at FTN, we will certainly miss you. We'll take a quick break here and we'll get into week 3. Joe Metz is going to join me in a little bit. We'll also talk Eagles and Cowboys here tonight. Don't go anywhere. Mean Streets continues right here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you, and we are going to recap Week 3. We'll take a look at some of the weekly leaders from a fantasy standpoint at the running back and the wide receiver position. We'll talk about the target leaders, the touches and opportunity leaders, and then a little bit later on, we'll have Joe Metz of FTN stop by, and we will hit the waiver wire for you. We'll talk about some running back ads and some wide receiver ads and just get Joe's thoughts on everything here. So through 3 weeks, these are your 3-0 teams: the Carolina Panthers, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Denver Broncos, the Arizona Cardinals, and the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams we're not super surprised about. We were on him on this show last week to beat the Bucks, and they're just a good team, right? But Las Vegas, Denver, Carolina, didn't see that coming. I mean, Denver, sure, the opponents haven't been great, but those are your 3-0 teams and your 0-3 teams. No real surprises here, I suppose. Indy 0-3, the Jets, the Giants 0-3, Jacksonville and Detroit 0-3. So those are kind of like your bottom feeders. The Giants have had 2 heartbreaking losses in kind of Giants fashion. I don't think they belong in this group, but they are there certainly right now. We will address that tomorrow when we talk about, obviously, the Dallas Cowboys and the Eagles can't go 3-0 and they won't fall to 0-3, but we'll address what teams are legit and what teams are for real here. So let's just start with your overall fantasy leaders from week 3. There's some names here at the top of the board that we may not see again, but Kareem Hunt up at the top, RB1 heading into Monday Night Football. James Robinson, RB2. Peyton Barber, RB3. Najee Harris, more on him in a little bit, but the most targeted player in week 3 with 19 looks. DeAndre Swift, Alexander Madison steps in for Dalvin Cook and has a phenomenal day. Austin Eckler, Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, and then you have Antonio Gibson in there as well. Also down the list, Derrick Henry and then James Conner. So that's the board. James Robinson is, I think, I don't know if he's the most surprising to be on this list. Certainly Peyton Barber is up there as well. But for James Robinson, man, it wasn't going good for him to start the game. I believe he had 1 fantasy point, 1.7 in the first half of yesterday. And as a James Robinson owner, I was, not going to lie, pretty frustrated. What the heck is going on? Why aren't they giving him the football? This offense stinks. The offensive line is not great. Robinson is a wasted pick. And then he has a really good second half. He runs the ball hard. There was a play where he got all the way down inside the red zone, and then he called himself off, and they put Carlos Hyde in there. It's like, man, Hyde is going to come in, and he's going to steal that red zone rushing attempt from him and get in the end zone. He was stuffed, and then Robinson came back in and got the touchdown. I would sell high. I do believe he's much better than Carlos Hyde, but Jacksonville has a lot going on, a lot of issues. The offensive line, as I mentioned, is not good. I don't know how many times we'll see James Robinson have an RB1 like season, and this happens so many times in fantasy football where people are willing to buy low or sell. They want to get Brandon Ayuk off the roster. When then they see Ayuk last night get starting reps like we all expected he would at some point, find the end zone. Nobody wants to get rid of him anymore. Same thing with James Robinson. Get him off my roster. I don't want anything to do with this guy. All of a sudden he has a good game and he's like, well, I can't share James Robinson. He just had a great game. He's RB2. Like, he just had 20 plus fantasy points. He caught 6 passes. A lot of those passes that he caught came in garbage time. And you would think that Jacksonville would have a lot of games where they're playing from behind and maybe James Robinson is going to catch 3 or 4 passes out of the backfield. I would sell high. When we talk buy lows and sell highs and trade targets with Tino later on in the week, he will be one of the guys that I think, I'm certainly willing to flip him and move on. Kareem Hunt, not a surprise up at the top there. He's just going to have those kind of games. Cleveland runs the football up pretty well, and he's had those games before in the past with Nick Chubb on the roster. Chubb, when we get into opportunities, he was among the leaders as well. Peyton Barber is certainly interesting. We'll talk more about him with Joe Metz, but 23 attempts, 111 rushing yards, has a touchdown, has 5 targets, 3 grabs for 31 yards. When John Gruden was asked about Kenyon Drake a couple weeks ago when Josh Jacobs wasn't going to be able to play, all he did was talk about Peyton Barber. And John Gruden loves everybody in the NFL, absolutely everyone. I don't know if there's a dude that he doesn't like, but he talked up a lot, Peyton Barber a lot. And Peyton Barber, it's back-to-back weeks now where this guy is getting some play. I mean, 13 for 32, obviously not that efficient in week 2 against Pittsburgh, but they went back to him with 23 carries and 111 yards in the ground. And still, Derek Carr chucked the ball 40 plus times and flirted with 400 yards. I know the game went to overtime, but he was still there. He was still well over 300 passing yards, and he just padded the stats. I mean, he still leads the league in passing yards and passing attempts, and Peyton Barber is still able to get a few touches as well. I don't know the status on Josh Jacobs. Last I heard, I got the notification from Sleeper, was Josh Jacobs brackets everything questionable to play. I know it's a toe and an ankle, but this could be maybe, Peyton Barber's running hard a little bit. The Raiders are 3-0. It's a big game this week against the Chargers. I don't know if Jacobs is going to suit up, but if he doesn't, I think Peyton Barber, I know it's not sexy. It's not appealing. He's going to get double-digit carries. I'm on, dare I say it, a high-powered offense. You roll him out there as a flex, depending on your situation. Najee Harris-Swift, there's not a whole lot to say about either of those guys, but we'll get into Najee in a little bit. And Alexander Madison. Alexander Madison has the monster game, 26 attempts for 112 yards, 8 targets, 6 grabs, 59 receiving yards. His ownership is 68% in Yahoo leagues. He's most likely owned, but one of the better handcuffs in the NFL. We have a large sample of Madison being productive when Cook isn't active. It does sound like Cook was, well, it sounds like he could return this week, but a lot of reports out of Minnesota had him really close to playing in that football game. So that is a good sign. And then Saquon Barkley, also a pretty good sign. 16 attempts, 51 rushing yards, has a rushing touchdown, 7 targets, 6 grabs, and 43 yards. And Booker wasn't active in that game, so you could feel good. We had him ranked as an RB1 this week over at ftmfantasy.com. I say we, myself, Jeff Ratcliffe, and Matthew Friedman all had him as a top running back this week, and you could just feel a little bit more, I think, confident rolling out Saquon. The buy low window is closed. You had an opportunity to grab this guy. I wouldn't be trading him. I wouldn't be selling him. I know there's probably some people who are a little hesitant about Saquon Barkley, but I think the people who did draft him, willing to spend maybe a mid to late first or get him in value as a second-round pick, you're most likely keeping him, and you should be encouraged with that week. Antonio Gibson, 12 for 31, doesn't do a whole lot. Saved his day with a touchdown, 1 catch, 73 yards. It was a really phenomenal run and a nice finish for him to touch the pylon and get the 6 there. What we said last week and what Tino and I have talked about on this show is going to be, some frustrating games from Antonio Gibson. It's not that he's not a great running back. It's just the usage, and J.D. McKissick is still out there on third down opportunities and 2-minute drills. He's still a part of the offense. I would be buying Antonio Gibson, but like I said, I don't view him as an RB1. I think he's a solid RB2. James Conner finds the end zone twice to kind of save his day. He picked up his very first target as a member of the Arizona Cardinals. He has 1 catch, 1 target, 10 yards, but 11 for 43. I do still think that Chase Edmonds is the guy. I'll always have him ranked ahead of Connor, because Edmonds is the guy who gets the targets, more targets, and also he still gets sprinkled in there on the ground. So he does a little bit of everything, where Chase Edmonds is really just a guy who plays first and second down roles. Zach Moss, we can get into him in a little bit. Let's switch gears and talk about the top wide receivers for week 3 of the fantasy season. Up at the top here, we have Mike Williams. Just a monster game. He's found the end zone now in every single game. This is really Mike Williams' breakout season. It's here. We're seeing it firsthand. This is why he was drafted as a top wide receiver out of Clemson. He's dealt with numerous injuries. He's healthy right now. The offensive line looks really good in Los Angeles, which has created more time for Justin Herbert. Another strong game for Justin Herbert, and all of a sudden he's 2-1 against the Chiefs. His very first start, he lost against the Chiefs, but it was his first start, and that game actually went to overtime. So here we are talking about the Raiders 3-0, the Broncos 3-0, and the Chargers 2-1, and the Chiefs 1-2, just like you drew it up after 3 weeks. Cooper Kupp, again, another strong week from Cooper Kupp. He's a lock and loaded top 5 wide receiver for me. I said top 10 last week. I think I got to bump him up to top 5. He's going to have some dud games when defenses maybe focus in on him, but he's such a strong route runner. He's got wicked hands, and Matthew Stafford is awesome. Devontae Adams, Emmanuel Sanders, more on him in a little bit, but he has the big week. He would be the top waiver wire ad for me, but there are a lot of strong wide receivers who aren't owned in more than 50% of Yahoo ESPN leagues that we could address later on. Justin Jefferson, he's a stud. Nothing really to say about him. He's a for sure top 10 wide receiver. Desean Jackson has the big week. Not a lot of targets, not a lot of snaps, but that's what he can do. This is what Jackson has done his entire career, is blow the top off defenses. A DFS play, I had some shares. I was feeling pretty good with my Ram stack yesterday. Jamar Chase, His sets an NFL record. He's got 4 receiving touchdowns in his first 3 games, just past Randy Moss, who had 3 in 3 to start his NFL career. But it looks like the dude can catch just fine, doesn't it? DK Metcalf, it was a Metcalf week and not a Tyler Lockett week, something that we had here at FTN. Kendrick Bourne, the big week, Chris Godwin, DJ Moore, and then Hunter Renfrow. Interesting. We can get into a few of those guys as well. Not a lot for me to say when it comes to some of these guys. We'll save Emmanuel Sanders. I got some things to say about Hunter Renfrow towards the end. Kendrick Bourne, I don't think he'll pop up here too often. The Pats did play from behind, and Jacoby Myers had, I think, 14 targets or something silly like that. They really were playing from behind, and James White left the game with an injury. So I think, in deeper leagues, potentially, if you do project the Pats to be playing from behind, and they have a date this week with New England, they play themselves. They have a date with the Bucks this week. So they will be playing from behind, and I don't know how much success they'll have running the football. We'll take a quick break and we'll look at the overall target and touches leaders from week 3 of the NFL season and see if there are any takeaways, see if there are any outliers, all that and more. And Joe Metz will also join us here soon to hit up some of the top waiver wire ads heading into week 4 of the NFL season. Mean Streets continues right here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on a Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you. Joe Metz is hanging by. We're going to take a look at some of the top waiver wire ads heading into week 4 of the fantasy football season. Right now, we're going to take a look at just the opportunity and touches leaders like we do every single week. And I know it's easy for you guys to sort it from your Yahoo or your ESPN page or whatever league you are playing in. But I just wanted to address it like we do here every single week. So let's talk about just the opportunity leaders and the red zone rush, or just the rushing attempt leaders here. So up at the top, like we normally will see every single week. Actually, we won't see this from Alexander Madison, but Henry is there. And Henry, there's Chubb, as you see Kamara, like these are dudes, Jones, like these guys are always going to be in there. Saquon now, he'll be in there. So you see the first number is opportunity. So that means attempts plus targets. And then the second number is overall touches. So Alexander Madison does lead the way. And just, I suppose, I don't know what there really is to say about Alexander Madison. He was 6K on DraftKings. He was a good play. Anytime Dalvin Cook doesn't play, I think you can view him as a borderline RB1. I really do. I mean, he's one of the better handcuffs in the National Football League, and he will be on these lists when we see Dalvin Cook's sideline. Najee Harris is the big one here. Najee Harris, 33 opportunities and 28 touches. I have some major concerns about this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. I mean, 19 targets, he has 14 catches. Najee Harris is playing a lot of the snaps and getting a lot of the opportunity in Pittsburgh, which is very encouraging. The rushing hasn't been all that great. And then we see Juju go down with an injury. And Big Ben is just, I mean, I don't know, man, what's going on with the Steelers offense? And clearly Big Ben has lost it. He can't push the ball down the field. I'll ask Metz if he has any concerns about anybody here in the Steelers offense. I think if you have Harris, the fact that if you're in a full-point PPR league, great, good on you. If you're in a half-point setting, I don't know if he's going to get 19 targets week in and week out, but he may flirt with 10, especially if Juju and Deontay are not going to be able to play in the weeks to come. But this offense is not great. It's not good. I have concerns about everybody in it. Derrick Henry, nothing really to say besides the fact that he is, getting, he reeled in 3 more catches And AJ Brown went down, and Julio Jones, I don't know, load management, I suppose. Like, he didn't seem to touch the field at all in week 3 in what was a competitive game, like a 1-score game. And Mike Vrabel says that they were just, managing his workload. It's strange to me. I know, we get it. He's 31, 32 years old, and he has some injury history, but I just don't understand what's going on in Tennessee. But maybe we will see Derrick Henry get 3 or 4 targets week in and week out, which is absolutely huge for his upside overall. Tino, you want to bring that list back up there just for a quick second? A few more guys here. Yeah. So Peyton Barber, Kamara, Sony Michel. Sony Michel has the big game. Not productive overall, but is a guy that just stepped in for Darrell Henderson. I thought he looked okay. We'll see if, Henderson is ready to go next week. I would buy on Henderson. I think he will get at least 70% of the snaps. Saquon, Chubb, Aaron Jones, James Robinson, and then DeAndre Swift in there. So let's take a look at some of the target leaders from week 3 in the NFL. And Harris, there he is up at the top with 19 targets. Devontae Adams, 18. So Chase Claypool, he gets a ton of targets, but he doesn't really do a whole lot with them. Jacoby Myers, 14. Cole Beasley, 13. Jalen Waddle has 13. A ton of targets and a ton of grabs. He just didn't do a lot with them either. I think he was like sub 60 yards. Cooper Kupp, DJ Moore, probably in line for more targets with Christian McCaffrey, unfortunately, going to be sidelined for a few weeks. Keenan Allen, Michael Pittman has another strong day. 2 straight strong weeks from him. And then Mike Gesicki in there as well. So overall, as I just kind of look at it myself here with just the targets and what these guys were able to do with some of them. So Adams has that big day. Chase Claypool's day was actually a little bit better than I thought. 9 catches for 96 yards. I just watched that game and I saw Big Ben underthrow him a couple times. The Steelers, what's happening? What's going on? Because Big Ben he called out Matt Canada, offensive coordinator, last week, said it's not on him. It's the play calling. And then if you watch that game against the Bengals yesterday, they're down 2 scores with a couple minutes left. I believe there were 4 minutes left, and they were on Cincy's 15, roughly. They're 15, certainly inside the red zone. And it was 4th and 10, and all they did was a swing pass at the line of scrimmage to Najee Harris. What? What is that? That play's not going to get you a score. You're down 2 scores. You need to throw the ball at least 10 yards down the field. I don't know. I don't know if that's... And I had this conversation with Jake Sealer this morning on his show, All in Football, Bets TV. I don't know if that's Big Ben saying, well, this is a play call. I just called out Matt Canada last week. Fine, we'll run it, and he'll look bad. And when I'm asked about it, I'll just blame him. Big Ben, dude, you don't have too many more snaps left in your career. Like, why wouldn't you call an audible? I don't know what's going on in Pittsburgh. I got some concerns. I got a lot of concerns. Najee Harris is still somebody that I like for the volume and the opportunity and the snaps. But now Juju's out and Claypool's not getting those shots down the field. I don't know. Did they make a quarterback change? Like, Mason Rudolph's not great, but at least he can push the ball down the field. The offensive line, some questions in there too. I don't know. It's not great what's going on. Cole Beasley is like your underrated dude that just, I don't know, he's owned in 53% of Yahoo leagues. He reels in 11 catches for 98 yards. He had a career season last year, double-digit fantasy points in 2 of his 3 games in a PPR setting once we get into bye weeks and injuries. It's not a sexy name to roll out there. I get it. The ceiling is not high, but he's somebody that you can play is just like, I can't take a 0 here. Let me get me double-digit fantasy points and see if we can, just move on and just put him in there and move on for the week. See if he can help you out. I mentioned Pittman, 12 targets, 6 grabs, 68 receiving yards for him as well. Another decent day, but a lot of concerns when it comes to this Colts offense. But at least we can say now, back-to-back weeks where Michael Pittman has had 12 targets and 123 yards last week and 68 this past week. But if you watch that Colts offense, it's really just dink and dunk, isn't it? It's just Nyheim Hines, Jonathan Taylor, little dump offs, Michael Pittman, screen passes. Wentz missed Pittman in the middle of the end zone, which would have tied the game yesterday. Also, a lot of concerns that I have with this Colts offense as well. Let's take a break. We'll bring in Joe Metz, and we'll talk about maybe some waiver wire ads and see what some of his big takeaways were from week 3. Emmanuel Sanders is the guy to talk about here, and I don't think it was just a solid week. I think this is a guy who could maybe turn back the clock a little bit. We'll talk about him and a whole lot more with Joe Metz. Keep it locked. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney and bringing in my guy Joe Metz of FTN, J Metz 34 on the Twitter machine. He will have a waiver wire article for you this evening over at ftnfantasy.com. Metz, welcome in, buddy. How are you?
Good. I'm doing well. Blood pressure was going crazy during the Packers game last night, but the surgical Aaron Rodgers drive just capped off a very good weekend in betting in DFS and fandom. So I'm doing well.
Nice. Yeah, I thought he didn't care about football.
I know.
Looked like a dude last night that didn't care at all about winning.
Right. I just 37 seconds is a lot of time, but it's not like, usually like, oh, don't give Aaron Rodgers 2 minutes. Don't give him a minute. He needs literally 30. He needs 2 plays to get down the field. And it's we talk about it every time something like this happens. It's probably once, twice a year. But every time it happens, you're just reminded just how good at football he and Devontae Adams are when they are in that situation. It's remarkable.
Yeah, Adams is a baller. I get San Fran, playing back a little bit, but guys, come on, double, triple Adams and don't play so soft. It had to have been frustrating from a Niners standpoint. But also a weird game in terms of just reffing. I thought it was just a brutal game overall. But yeah, the Packers pull through a big W. You were on them, I believe. A lot of us were on them at the plus money. Yeah, we had Big John come. We talked about a lot of upsets that kind of pulled through. We're on the Rams on this show. We were on Cincinnati on this show and the Packers as well. So that's solid to get some dogs anyways. It's you don't see the upsets too often, but I don't even view that as a big upset. I get it, you're playing in San Fran and the Packers have struggled at times from against the Niners certainly over the past couple of years. Did you have any major takeaways from week 3 before we get into some waiver wire stuff?
You actually hit on one of my biggest takeaways, and that's just the mess that the Steelers are turning out to be. We knew going into this year the offensive line was going to have its struggles, but Deontay Johnson out. Now Juju's hurt. Now Chase Claypool is limping with something. Ben Roethlisberger looks like a corpse. It just looks like he's going to crumble. Can't move the ball more than 3 yards downfield, which is good for Najee Harris. But I just my expectations for that offense are very, very, very low. I'm sure we'll see some opportunity open up on the waiver wire when we get into that. But I just Bengals defense is not a unit to write home about, and they looked phenomenal yesterday. Phenomenal. Outside of that, though, not a ton. I think we saw Alexander Madison crushed, and I think there was a lot of polarization on him just because he had that one big game in Seattle last year, but the other game he started for Dalvin Cook was kind of underwhelming. I think he had 13 for 31. But he came in, did his thing. Seattle's giving up production on the ground. And not necessarily takeaway. I'm all aboard the Eagles tonight. So I know I see you're decked out in your Eagles gear. Cowboys are a team I'm high on, but I still think people are sleeping on Jalen Hurts and company.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know I don't think they win. I think Dallas wins, but
I think they'll hang around. As a fan, need to prepare yourself for the worst. So
yeah, fair enough. Yeah. And my expectations weren't high heading into this season, but Jalen Hurts has been impressive in the offensive line. Has looked pretty good, and we'll see how that plays out. You do have some picks, some prize pick stuff over at ftndaily.com. Yeah, check. You've been red hot fire, so I check it out. Prize picks is fun. If anybody's unfamiliar, it's a simple over under on a player's fantasy prop or their fantasy score, and sometimes you don't even need to go perfect, right? You can go 2 for 3 and get some of that cash back as well. Okay, before we get into waivers, which of these 3-0 teams do you believe in that are? I'll leave off Arizona and LA. Carolina 3-0, Las Vegas 3-0, and Denver 3-0. Which of those 3 teams are you a believer in, if any?
I just feel like those are 3 of the most, on paper, just mediocre teams in the NFL.
Right.
Yeah. Carolina's defense, Elliott has been talking about it for about a week now. They've been phenomenal. I just don't know if that keeps up. I think I'd have the most faith in Denver. I think Teddy Bridgewater can do enough to manage the game, even without Jerry Jeudy. Tim Patrick is a fine fill-in. I think Javonte Williams looks phenomenal, so he gets more touches, and he's going to be able to produce. And that defense is really good as long as they stay healthy. So I think they just, because their defense just need a game manager, and that's what Teddy Bridgewater is. I don't think they're going to go, 12-5 or anything like that. I think we could very well see 11-6, 10-7 type of season from them. It's going to be ugly football, but it could be winning football.
Yeah, who would have thought after 3 weeks that they would be 3-0? I know the schedule hasn't been great, but they're still winning. I mean, to shut
Yeah,
out anybody in the NFL, Jets or nobody, whatever, is still a pretty solid accomplishment. And then the Raiders are 3-0, and they've had tougher tests. I mean, they
they've
beat
had
Baltimore, they
really
went into
tough tests. Yeah,
Pittsburgh. Yeah, and then Miami is a competitive team, and they found a way to win that game. And then the Chargers are sitting in third place at 2-1, and then the Chiefs are in last place at 1-2. So who would have
yeah.
thought that would be the case here after 3 weeks, man? Wild. All of a sudden, it's a good division, I guess.
Yeah. Not what we
Who
expected,
knows?
but I'm sure it'll look completely different 3 weeks from now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay. Waiver wire stuff. Like, who's going to be your number one priority this week?
Chuba Hubbard, and I think he's going to be everyone's number one priority. My big thing with Chuba was as soon as McCaffrey went down to see how many snaps he would play relative to Royce Freeman. He saw 40. Royce Freeman only saw 11. I'm sure that will kind of adjust a little bit going forward, but we saw Mike Davis step in just fine last year. At the end of the day, I don't think anyone's going to replicate McCaffrey's ceiling or floor, but Chuba Hubbard is now at least a weekly flex play in that offense. So I'm all over him. I see him as number one on your board, and I don't disagree at all. I would spend more money on him than I would have spent on Elijah Mitchell, 2 weeks ago. So I'm all over him. I love the Zach Moss call as well. The snaps are now shifting into his favor as opposed to Devin Singletary, and he's getting the red zone and goal line work, which I think is very, very, very important. And a couple wide receivers. Tim Patrick is still under-owned. He's still under-owned, and if KJ Hamler is hurt, I saw he went down in week 3. Tim Patrick is only going to have more targets now that Teddy Bridgewater has shown the willingness and ability to go downfield. And Emmanuel Sanders, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be a reliable asset to start every week, but I think he's in the flex conversation every week because of how much they pass the ball in that offense. And it doesn't look like he's going away. He's obviously the number 3 option behind Beasley and Stephon Diggs, but he's getting the meaningful targets, and has a proven track record. So I don't necessarily think it's a blip on the radar. I'd probably rather add Emmanuel Sanders than someone like an AJ Green or a Christian Kirk right now, because that's just a carousel that I am head over heels frustrated with trying to figure out right now in Arizona.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. AJ, he's coming off his first 100-yard game since 2018. Yeah, sell. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody that's willing to buy AJ, but I would agree. Like him and Kirk, or it's just going to be like Tampa, where they rotate through big games.
Yeah.
Where Hopkins wasn't 100%, but Hopkins is like that guy inside that offense, and then Kirk, and then Rondell Moore, and then you have AJ kind of, sprinkled in a little bit. I agree with you on Sanders. I don't know how consistent he can be, but the offense likes to throw the football, and they're really good at throwing the football. And Josh Allen had that breakout game that, against a defense that I think a lot of people thought were good, but maybe not playing up to par in Washington. But what I've noticed with Diggs is that Diggs is still getting the same kind of target share. It's just teams are like doubling them. They're just saying, what, we're not gonna lose because Diggs is tearing us up. And it's almost like Tyreek Hill, the same thing. We saw it a couple weeks ago in Baltimore, and then yesterday we saw the Chargers really just say, okay, we can't really do anything about Travis Kelce, but we'd much rather have Patrick Mahomes throw the football to Pringle or Hardman as opposed to Tyreek Hill. And it is a copycat league. So I think teams are probably looking at how to defend Buffalo, and Buffalo torching everybody last year, and seeing Diggs just torch everybody as well. Yeah. And this is what we got to do. We got to take away. So that does leave some soft opportunities here for Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley in a deeper league. I don't know. He's got 23 grabs, 194 yards, double-digit fantasy points, I think, in a PPR league. I like the Patrick call. I'm shocked his ownership is only 22%. Yeah. Henry Ruggs is another guy, 9 catches in his last 2 weeks. Very boom or bust. I don't know if I'm there yet, Metz, and rolling this guy out as like a wide receiver 3. But Raiders, we just talked about them earlier. Nobody's throwing the football more than Derek Carr, and he leads the league in passing yards. He's crushing it right now. And Henry Ruggs, it's been a much better start in his sophomore campaign than his rookie campaign. Are you there? Would you sell him? Are you there in terms of, I'll play him as a flex guy and I'll take that upside, but knowing that he could give you a 1 or 2 or 0?
I think I'm there as a flex play right now if needed. I wouldn't be selling. I think I'd be holding if I have him. If you have a spot on the bench where you're willing to part with someone who hasn't done anything, I think it's worth a pickup because, like you said, Derek Carr's throwing the ball more than anybody in the NFL right now. And on top of that, if you watch the game yesterday against Miami, similar to what you said about Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs, they were triple teaming Darren Waller. I think as you said, the copycat league, we're going to see that more and more, which will just open up more room for Henry Ruggs to operate down the field. So I like that call. I much prefer Henry Ruggs to these Giants guys like Kadarius Toney, Colin Johnson, things like that. But if you understand the floor, I think I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's a thing. You do have to understand the floor, but he's getting sprinkled in a little bit more, and I think teams are really focusing in on Darren Waller as well. Hunter Renfrow is another guy. I mean, at least 5 grabs and 57 yards in each game. Like it's not a sexy name, but injuries are happening. AJ Brown is down. Who knows what's happening here with Julio Jones? We have T. Higgins. We have Deontay Johnson. Juju leaves with an injury. There are injuries across the board, and we're going to get into some of these bye weeks as well. So I think I'd rank Sanders, Patrick, Ruggs for that upside. Beasley, Renfrow are kind of like the same. And then there's other guys.
Would you throw James Washington in there? That's the guy I'm really torn on right now because Ben can't throw. Big Ben cannot throw right now, but there's no one else to catch the ball. So I don't know where I would slot James Washington, and that's what I've been struggling with all morning.
Let's look at the snaps here. Let's figure this out on the fly. So 76 snaps for Chase Claypool, 15 targets. James Washington, 66 snaps, runs 50 routes, so 7 fewer than Claypool, gets 5 targets. Ray McLeod kind of feel like he just stepped in for that Juju role, basically did everything that Juju would do and the snaps in there. I think no on Washington. I think a spec ad, but I don't know. I definitely put him behind all the guys that we just talked about because of the Steelers offense, right? I mean, Big Ben. But if Deontay misses some weeks, and we find out today that Juju is going to be sidelined for a few weeks, then maybe I think you need to bump him up the board a little bit, Metz.
Yeah. I don't disagree at all.
All right. I want to keep you around for one more segment because there's a lot of concerned folks out there, and I want to get your thoughts on some things. But I will say this about Chuba, kind of come full circle here, is that I do believe he is the number one priority. We don't have a timetable here on CMC. He's expected to miss a few weeks. Now, he is a rookie running back. Pass blocking is going to have to be, he's going to have to excel in that situation because Royce Freeman is a guy who has some experience in this league. I do believe he's probably a better pass blocker. But everything that I got from just a small sample of the second half, so he had 40 snaps. He ran 20 routes. Freeman had 11 snaps and ran 4 routes. That Chuba got all the third down work. He was even on the field in a 4th down role. He had 11 for 52, 5 targets, 3 grabs. He dropped a pass in the end zone. But he is probably going to get a few targets as well. Like, what are you thinking? If you need a running back, how aggressive do you need to be? 30, 40% of your fab?
I would say close to 50. I would honestly say close to 50%. I feel, and again, this is simply because we've unfortunately seen this before last year in Carolina. They're not a team to roll out a committee back when Christian McCaffrey goes down. It's not like San Francisco when Raheem Mostert goes down. You see 3 guys, like their fullback was their best backfield option yesterday in terms of fantasy points. You don't see that in Carolina. So I would probably bid pretty aggressively, especially with how well this defense is playing. They could be working with a good amount of positive game script this season. I think the only hindrance is just the unknown regarding McCaffrey's absence. If he's out 3-4 weeks, if he's out 5-6, if he's out for 1. But if you are, especially if you're like an 0-3 team after this week, I think you need to be pretty aggressive.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, if your RB2 is like not a top 25, 30 back, you need to be super aggressive. Peyton Barber was on that list just because it's a desperate situation. If you need somebody now, you roll him out there. I had to play him last week, and twice I've actually had to play him. 2 weeks ago was awful, and then yesterday was more than I could have ever imagined. He may not do anything again, but the fact that he's getting some of those touches is certainly encouraging. And then I agree with you, Zach Moss. Like, he was one of the most drop backs a couple weeks ago. Just to have a running back linked to a top offense, I know at times it could be frustrating, but what you said, he's getting some red zone work, and they play Houston this week, and I think they're 17-point favorites. They probably lean on the run game in the second half, so he could be something for you as well. Stick around, Metz. One more segment. There's a few guys I want to bring up with you.
Cool.
Keep her locked. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney and Joe Metz here with you. Just got about 4 minutes, Metz. So I asked a question and it was a loaded question. I'm getting a lot of responses here. Usually people don't interact with me on social. But I said, who are you considering dropping this week? Who are some players that you are concerned about? Tyson Williams seems to be the guy most people are talking about here. Tyson, we have Ronald Jones from Brooke Cromer. Brooke, you just got to drop Jones. You ain't getting any touches. Allen Robinson, Robert Woods, Tyreek Hill, Michael Carter, Allen Robinson again, Robbie Anderson, Jonnu Smith, Allen Robinson, A.J. Brown, he's hurt, Michael Carter. It's a lot of the same names here. Dropping Corey Davis, may drop Singletary, concerned about Gibson, also Ridley. Julio, what the heck is going on with Julio? Robbie Anderson, Robert Woods.
Wow.
Yeah, and Tyson Williams. Out of all those names, who stands out to you as like the most concerning dude?
Probably Michael Carter in redraft. The thing is, if you're in like a 12 or 14 team league, I don't know if I'm dropping any of those guys, especially Tyreek Hill, Allen Robinson, guys like that. I get it's a frustrating start, but you have to think about the opportunity cost. You're not going to find their upside anywhere on the waiver wire. Michael Carter does worry me. I'm a believer in him as an individual. He was great at North Carolina. I think he's shown flashes this year, but the Jets have so many problems right now. They're not going to be playing from ahead. Their offensive line is awful. Their quarterback play is a non-threat right now, so it just allows teams to key in on the run. And he's still fighting with Ty Johnson and Tevin Coleman a bit for snaps. So I think there are right now more unfavorables than favorables for Michael Carter. So of that list, he'd probably be my number one. I would not drop Robert Woods. I know that was a popular one. Brooke, I'm sorry about Ronald Jones. I just don't mess with any of that Tampa Bay backfield.
You can't start any of those guys.
No, I mean, Fournette's catching passes at the least, but like Tom Brady was their leading rusher last week. When was the last time in his career that has ever been the case? Has it ever been the case? I
don't think so.
I don't think it has. So I think my answer for that would be Michael Carter. I mean, Jonnu Smith is probably one I'd put up there, but again, the tight end's a wasteland, so it's going to be hard to find anything close to what Jonnu Smith can do on the waiver wire. But if someone's floating out there, if someone drops Dallas Goedert or something like that after his disappointing start, like a Pat Freiermuth, I wouldn't mind picking up for Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, at some point you're just with these tight ends. You're right. It's just a crapshoot. You just want them to find the end zone. I think Jonnu will be okay. He had a bad drop there, which led to a turnover. I think a lot of the names that I just brought up, I mean, they're buy lows, right? People are concerned about Tyreek Hill or Calvin Ridley. The schedule turns really nice for the Rams. They have some soft matchups coming forward. Robert Woods will get his, but it's clear like Cooper Kupp. Like I get the frustrations. Like Robert Woods, the Rams are cooking. They're so good on offense. Matthew Stafford's having all these games, but yet Robert Woods is not really, doing anything. So I understand all of that. We got about a minute. Robbie Anderson. I don't know, man. Like out of all these guys, I think we could drop it for Tim Patrick, can't we?
I think you can drop it for Tim Patrick, but I would wait to drop Robbie Anderson until what the news on McCaffrey is, because that's
good call.
7 to 10 targets that are going to open up.
Good call.
Definitely a disappointing start. He's the clear wide receiver too. I would hold until McCaffrey news comes out.
What about Julio Jones? Would you buy low on him? Or I don't understand. I'm trying to dig man, we only had like 30 seconds. Like you buying Julio Jones or not?
I think I am, but I need to know. Like, if people are asking too much, no, I wouldn't offer a ton, but I want to buy Julio Jones. I'd buy Julio Jones if A.J. Brown wasn't hurt.
Yeah, I don't know. Watching that game yesterday, it was competitive. He didn't touch the field in the fourth quarter. And then Vrabel says they're just managing his workload. But A.J. Brown was out. He didn't play. He only played like a series or two. And Julio, I get he's a little bit older, but they didn't even put him in some red zone packages when, again, it was a one-score game. I don't fully understand what's going on with Julio. I guess proceed with caution because it does seem like Mike Vrabel doesn't totally love him altogether.
Doesn't make sense.
But I think a lot of it doesn't. I think a lot of the names that we just brought up are buy low candidates. Metz, you bring up a good point. Maybe don't drop Robbie Anderson, but don't start him just yet. If McCaffrey does miss a few weeks, we could see Robbie get a few more targets. Dude, always a pleasure. Make sure you check out Joe Metz on the Twitter machine at JMetz34. And also his waiver wire column will be up at ftnfantasy.com. We got some picks here to wrap up the show. Keep her locked. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Just going to give myself a little bit of headroom here on the fly, and away we go. I got some NFL picks here for you for tonight's game, Eagles and Cowboys. Let's get after it. I got a couple props. We'll start here with Jalen Hurts over 53.5 rushing yards. We got Jalen Hurts over 7.5 rushing attempts. We got Dak Prescott over 297 passing yards. We had over 292 in the bet tracker on Friday. FTN Alerts is a great Twitter handle for you. You will get notified when a bet is made, and then you can jump on it before the odds change. And then CeeDee Lamb over 6.5 grabs is plus money, sitting at 25.36 units overall. And we have a 4-leg parlay, which would give us 6 more units if Dallas can pull off the victory here tonight, which I do think they do. This is not being a pessimistic fan or anything like that. I am rocking green. I think Dallas is better. I think that they have a better offense. I think the Eagles have a better defense. I think they have, the offensive line probably on par when Dallas is fully healthy. The Eagles will be able to generate some pressure, and I think they'll do a good job of, stopping the run here. But at the same time, I do think, the offense will run through Dak's arm. And that's why I like the over here. He's averaging 357 passing yards per game over his last 7. And that's including a game where he faced the New York Giants and he left early in that game. Last week was, I think, a little bit of an outlier. They had more of a balanced attack, but you could run on the Chargers. I think they'll struggle to run the football against the Eagles. So I'm taking the over there. And then CeeDee Lamb is his guy. Amari Cooper is expected to play here. He's not 100%. He's dealing with a rib injury. Cooper has had some really good games against the Eagles, but Darius Slay actually has a history of shutting him down. They acquired him not because they wanted to have him shut down Amari Cooper, but that was talked about in the Philly organization and the success that he has had against Amari Cooper and shutting down top tier wide receivers. Now, he's not the same Darius Slay as years prior, but I think he'll have an okay game, and it's just going to be a lot of CeeDee Lamb. I don't think the Eagles will have an answer for CeeDee. 24 targets and 15 catches here in 2 games. And then you see Hurts, the over 53.5 rushing yards. This may creep up to 55.5, 56.5. I would go as high as 57.5. He's averaging 76 rushing yards per game in his 5 completed games. Again, 5 completed games. He was pulled in week 17. 17 attempts he has in 2 games, so the over 7.5 rushing attempts as well. I will take this every time until I see him not have a game where hasn't had 60 rushing yards. He's had at least 60 in all 5 of his completed games in 76. He's just a runner. I get a bet builder here on the way out. I got it's 9-1. It's a lot of the same that we've just talked about, but the numbers have changed slightly. 55.5, 7.5 attempts. That's the rushing for Hurts, 55.5. Dak over 301, and then CeeDee over 6.5 grabs, and then CeeDee over 80.5 receiving yards. That is 9-1. A whole lot more over at ftnbets.com. Enjoy the game. We'll break it all down tomorrow. Have a good one. Cheers.